Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special business meeting for Tuesday, July 20th. We are meeting tonight on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. Atsqualin, Usquothillet, Blackfoot, Okanagan. We have an amended agenda before us, Council. That is 9B1, just added wording to the motion. Does someone want to move the amended agenda? Moved by Council French, seconded by Council Herford. Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. I just want to read a statement that our legislative services staff have prepared just around our M192 ministerial order that we've been reading at the beginning of every council meeting since, well, near the beginning of the pandemic. And I know that restrictions are lifting, so I thought we'd provide a bit more clarity to the public and my video feed around how this will transition over the next few months. So the Ministry of Municipal Affairs provided local governments with the ability for council and the public to participate in council meetings electronically during the pandemic by issuing Ministerial Order M192. M192 expires 90 days after the state of emergency was lifted, July 1, so at the end of September. In line with lifting the state of emergency, the province adopted legislation that allows local governments to amend their meeting procedures bylaw and continue with electronic participation to include the public and more members of council where it might make sense to do so. To this end, the province is currently drafting regulations which will guide the drafting of these procedure bylaw amendments. Until the release of these regulations and the adoption of our bylaw amendments, we will still require a council motion indicating how the district is ensuring transparency in our meetings. That we are allowing electronic participation by both council and the public, that the public can join the meeting platform or live stream of the meeting, and that the agendas are posted in advance of the meetings. Additionally, council chambers has reopened and members of the public can attend and observe any open council meeting, including committee of the whole. When step 4 is implemented in September, in-person public participation, so note the difference between right now is attend and observe, and after step 4, it will be, you can then participate while you're here, will be available for council members and, for council meetings and for public hearings, in addition to electronic participation. So with that clarity, and knowing that tonight we're ensuring transparency by live streaming this meeting, a video will be available on an on-demand basis on the district website. The meeting is open for the public for electronic participation via WebEx, and limited in-person attendance in council chambers is also available. Someone want to move that? Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for that. Council, any notice of motion? All right, seeing none. We have one delegation this evening. Sharon Gregson is here from the Coalition of Childcare Advocates of BC. We did receive Sharon's letter a little bit earlier this year around the improvements that we've been trying to make in Squamish around improving access to childcare and some good suggestions on what we can do differently. And the federal government made their announcement with BC around implementing the Universal Child Care Plan. And so really pleased to welcome Ms. Gregson here to this evening, and I will turn the floor over to her. You're just on mute still, Sharon.
There we go. Thank you. I'm very used to Zoom, not so much WebEx. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present to council this evening. I really appreciate that. I'm Sharon Gregson. I work with the Coalition of Childcare Advocates of BC. I'm a former Vancouver School Board trustee and now I work exclusively in the early childhood sector. Um, and I work on the $10 a day childcare plan, which was launched 10 years ago. Hard to believe 10 years has gone by so fast. It was launched with the coalition I work with, as well as the Early Childhood Educators of BC. Our two organizations put forward a plan based on evidence and research of what a universal, quality, affordable childcare system in our province could look like. And progress has been made. If progress had started 10 years ago when we first launched, we'd be a lot further ahead now. But progress did start in 2018 with the launch of Childcare BC. And since then, we have seen fees reduced somewhat for families. We've seen new spaces funded, and we've seen a wage enhancement for early childhood educators, as well as some other investments in children with special needs and post-secondary education for educators. But while some progress has been made, clearly a crisis still exists for families. And just today, I received a poignant letter from one of your residents, which I'm sure many of you will have read and received as well. Just talking about how women are actually having to leave the workforce because of lack of access to quality, affordable childcare. And the pandemic, we all know, has made that much more difficult for women, and women's employment is now back at where it was in the early 80s, particularly for sectors around the caring economy. So while progress has been made, we have also seen the growth of the for-profit sector in our province, which has meant fees are higher for families and wages are often lower, typically in the for-profit sector. And so the solution to this is the $10 a day plan. And it is the 10 a day plan which is driving, which is the impetus for much of the improvements that are being made by the provincial government. And now, as was mentioned, the federal government is taking 10 a day across the country. So the work that we've done in BC has resonated so much that now other provinces are signing agreements to move to 10 a day. And we know that Nova Scotia has done that, and other provinces are following suit. So I made a presentation to your council several years ago, and your council endorsed the 10 a day plan, which 66 other regional and municipal governments have done, along with the majority of school districts in the province. And Sea to Sky School District is one of those. And it's important to note that in the last provincial election, it was the current government that made some strong commitments around implementing $10 a day childcare, bringing 10 a day to more families, expanding school-age childcare on school grounds, and investing in the ECE workforce. They also made some commitments around capital. And I think that perhaps for your district, your community, this is of particular importance of how to actually get more spaces. So it's great to make them affordable, but you actually need a capital plan that's going to create new spaces. And so in the provincial commitments, we've seen a commitment to modular expansion. So custom designed modular buildings built to be flexible to accommodate different age groups at different times. And this is one of the solutions we've suggested as a way to relatively quickly improve the accessibility of childcare in communities. So the bilateral agreement just signed with the provincial government and federal governments is a $3.2 billion commitment. That's BC's share of the new federal money, $3.2 billion over 5 years. And even though it ramps up, even the first year, the year that we've just started now, is over 300 million. So it's a substantial investment in improvements. And it's important for you to know that the federal government and the provincial government have agreed that expansion of new spaces, new programs will be in the not-for-profit and public sectors. That is significant to think about. That's how the system is going to grow. They have committed to funding 30,000 new spaces over the next 5 years and 40,000 over the next 7 years, and expanding the number of 10 a day prototype sites, as they're called now, to over 12,000. So this is going to be a significant investment of federal dollars, along with the province is already spending 2.5 billion on childcare. So we're going to see some changes happening soon. Before December of next year, the average fees in our province will be dropping by 50% with this new federal funding. And within that 5-year time frame, fees on average will be 10 a day across the province. So some massive changes happening, and really important that municipal and governments and districts and school districts are really involved in how this system is going to grow. They've also committed to developing an ECE wage grid, because we know part of the problem is not enough people working in the sector because of the historically poverty level wages. And so we're starting to see some improvements there. And I know my time is up, or close to it. So I just want to touch on a little bit about what the District of Squamish could do. Making public land available for modular buildings, making sure that you keep up the pressure on the province. This is about being the squeaky wheel and making sure that the province knows that you're ready for expansion of publicly funded and not-for-profit delivered childcare. Invite Minister Chen and Minister Whiteside to talk with you about childcare. Childcare is moving out of MCFD and into the Ministry of Education next year. So that relationship with your school district is really vital. That's how expansion is going to happen, not through the for-profit sector, but through school districts. So childcare is moving into the Ministry of Education. We already know that's happening. So any spaces that you do create as a condition of development, really important that those spaces be turned over to a not-for-profit to operate, because that's where the new federal money is going to flow. So that's the future of childcare. That's where we're at now, just on the cusp of these significant changes happening. And I know that it's a #1 issue for you, for the people in your community. And so really happy to take any questions if I can answer those.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gregson. And just for clarity, will the $10 a day subsidies from the government come at all to for-profit childcare, or are they eligible at all for fee reduction?
Our recommendation to government is that all providers, licensed family childcare, licensed group care, including the for-profit sector, be invited into the new system. But of course, when we're talking about significant new public funding, there has to be accountability that goes along with that funding. So that means if you're going to accept the new public funds, that you're accountable to lower parent fees with that money, you're accountable to raise ECE wages, and you're accountable to run a quality program. This is not about using public funds for private assets, for buying real estate. This is about operating childcare programs. So for operators who want to be part of that new system, absolutely invited in.
Thank you. Council, are there any other questions while we have Ms. Gregson here? I don't see any. I really appreciate the suggestions that you've brought to us this evening, the ones that were in your letter. And this is transformational change that I wish had been here when my kids were still in daycare. I know it is a crisis. Council knows it's a crisis in our community. And so we will take up your suggestions, Ms. Gregson, and be that squeaky wheel, and
Yes.
also look at other opportunities for the modular buildings. So thank you very much.
Yes, my pleasure. Good luck.
Thank you for all your hard work to get us to this point too.
Yeah, my pleasure. Bye for now.
All right. Consideration of any unscheduled public attendance. So this would be anyone who feels that they have an item that cannot wait till September, almost said 2 weeks, till our next regular business meeting on September 7th. And there's no one online. Okay. That's put their hand up. So we will move on to item 9, our bylaws. We have second reading this evening of the Squamish zoning bylaw for 1257 Commercial Way. This is amendment bylaw number 2752/2020. And welcome Mr. Daly to the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. Can you see my presentation? Okay.
We can, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, Development and Subdivision Coordinator with Community Planning. I'm here tonight to present a rezoning application at 1257 Commercial Way for consideration of second reading. The July 6, 2021 Special Council meeting, Amendment Bylaw number 2752 was given first reading. Council requested more clarity on the amendments related to business and professional office minor and retail limitations on full-service grocery store. Section 39B11A outlines the conditions of use for business and professional office minor and contains 3 subsections. The first, the total gross floor area of this use is limited to 1,394 square meters in the zone. The use is only allowed to occur in 20% of the gross floor area of a ground floor unit or on the second story or upper level mezzanine, and accessory retail sales associated with this use are not permitted. Bylaw 2752 proposes to delete section 39B11A II to remove the condition restricting this use to 20% of a ground floor unit or on a second story. This was requested by the property owner to allow for more flexibility for this use to occur in the zone. Restricting this use to 20% of a ground floor unit makes it difficult for future users to grow if necessary. Removing this condition does not prohibit this use from being located on a second story or an upper level mezzanine. It is intended to allow the use on the ground floor as well. The developer has indicated their intentions to continue constructing buildings in a tilt-up method similar to the adjacent sites. This form of construction can contain multiple stories. However, the applicant advises that the parking demand required to accommodate a full second story of office is not feasible on this site. The building footprint could be made smaller to allow for more parking space. However, the taller the building, the more expensive it will cost to construct, which will increase rental rates. Further, this would remove the opportunity for other ground floor users to acquire mezzanine space and would have fire separation implications for industrial tenants on the ground floor. Staff are supportive of this proposed amendment, as OCP Policy 17.4A supports business and professional office minor use in the business park, and the limitations on the overall gross floor area allowed in the zone and accessory retail sales associated with the use remain in place. Allowing this use will provide space for a use category that is currently seeing a shortage in short-term supply. In addition, introduction of some business offices on the ground floor adds to the diversity of employment space in the business park. Section 39B11F contains conditions of use associated with retail stores. One of the conditions excludes a full-service grocery store as a permitted retail use. While modifying the exclusion of a full-service grocery store is not proposed through this rezoning, a question was raised by council regarding what would constitute a full-service grocery store and whether a smaller store selling food would be permitted. This would not preclude a small grocery store with limited products, such as a deli, from being permitted in I-9. The intention behind this limitation is to not allow for a large or even medium-sized grocery store that would offer a wide range of products from opening in the business park. This use would be competing for valuable employment land in the business park and is more appropriate in higher density areas such as downtown or the Garibaldi Commercial Center. It is also worth noting that Walmart is located within close proximity of the area, already provides limited grocery store services. It should also be noted that the property owner made this application for rezoning. This is not a district-led rezoning. Staff are supportive of the amendments requested by the applicant, as they are supported by OCP policies and will lead to a more diverse mix of uses in the zone. If this rezoning is not successful, there is a risk that a number of future tenants in the unbuilt portion of the property will be restaurants, which would limit the diversity of uses in this zone. Legislated and district processes for engagement were followed for this application. A development proposal sign was installed on the subject property, and the project was posted on the online development showcase. No comments have been received to date. Staff recommend that bylaw 2752 be given second reading and that an electronic and in-person public hearing be scheduled for September 21st, 2021 at 6 p.m. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thanks, Mr. Daly. Council, are there any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Thank you. With the proposed zoning, if an office tenant or tenants decided the space worked for them and wanted to install a complete second floor of sorts, maybe not a very pretty one, but a functional one, would that require rezoning or a variance of some sort, or can that be accommodated within this proposed zoning?
That could be accommodated within this proposal. It would not require a rezoning or a development variance permit. It would just require a building permit application.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question is, from the report, I understand that one of the drivers for the style is our parking requirements and the sort of, making the parking sort of work with the building footprint and so on. If a really great business came along that didn't require a lot of parking, it wasn't a car dependent business, what sort of process would that require rezoning at that point to sort of accommodate some of that, or do we have any leeway there?
Through the mayor, it would really depend on the type of use. If the use is permitted in the zone, it wouldn't require a rezoning application. It might require a development variance permit for the parking, but it's kind of hard to speculate without knowing. If it's a use that falls within the zone, it would not require a rezoning. It could be, the parking could potentially be varied through a development variance permit application.
Okay, thanks. And as I asked, I realized it was a nonsensical question, because the question, I think, is to to allow a business with no or less parking, but if they go now, the parking's already there, and so it's somewhat of a moot point. But just sort of hopeful that we move away from our dependence on vehicles, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pettingill. Any other questions? Thanks, Mr. Daly, for your presentation to address some of the questions that were raised by Council last time. So not seeing any hands, then the motion that's before us is to provide second reading and then schedule a public hearing for September 21st at 6 p.m. That is moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor French. Any comments? Go ahead, Councillor Herford.
Thank you. I'd like to appreciate staff's work to provide the clarity that we needed to fully understand what the decision we were contemplating. And with that clarity, I'm happy to support this, and I think it'll promote diversity in tenants in the area. So happy to support. Thank you.
Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, happy to support this to go to public hearing, and just on the back of my nonsensical question, this does strike me as an area where there aren't, there's not neighborhood impacts and so on, and I'd be more inclined to let the market decide what parking is actually needed, and really focus on what kind of building we want, and have some leeway there. Just sort of food for thought for everyone. But as is, I can support this going to public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, I was the one who put forward the motion to just put forward first reading at the July 6th meeting. So appreciate staff's efforts to include further clarity on the questions raised. And in particular, the track changes version really helped me just understand the changes that were being contemplated here and the impacts that it might have. I'm happy to support second reading at this time, especially knowing that it's not going to change the total gross floor area for business and professional office. I am a little bit concerned about the inclusion of personal service establishment in this area, but I'm happy to let that go to public hearing and see if we get any feedback on it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, happy to support second reading. I think we do need some more diverse businesses in this area. That was sort of the intent of the I-9 zone, which was, I think, hard to write to begin with. And so appreciate that our public now gets to comment on some more diverse uses than what has just shown up. Happy to support this motion. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Mr. Daly. Council, next up is 9B, adoption of District of Squamish zoning bylaw amendment bylaw for CD90 zone Centennial Way, number 2529 2018. Now, normally on adoption, we don't do a presentation, but it's been quite some time. There were several things that the developer needed to meet prior to adoption. And so Ms. Phillip is here to just talk about the motion that's in front of us and give us an update before we vote.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Elliott. I'll just queue up the presentation here. All right, can everybody see the presentation? Awesome. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Asia Phil, planner with the Community Planning and Infrastructure Department. Tonight, I'm presenting zoning amendment bylaw 2529 for consideration of adoption. This is the rezoning for 1701 and 1940 Commercial Way, which is proposed to be rezoned to a comprehensive development zone, CD90. The rezoning was brought for public hearing and was given third reading on February 18th, 2020. At third reading, 10 conditions were required to be fulfilled prior to consideration of adoption. These conditions have been met by the proponent, and Council can now consider adoption of the bylaw. So before we get into the details of the conditions, I'll just quickly run through the development proposal shown here. So the site is split by Centennial Way, which bisects the property. The project has been broken down into 3 phases. Phase 1 covers the northern portion of the south site adjacent to Centennial Way, and it consists of light industrial space, office space, a dedicated childcare space, and a mix of affordable and market rental apartments. Phase 2 covers the entire northern site and consists of commercial retail space, office space, and for sale apartments and townhouses. And finally, phase 3 covers the southern portion of the south site and consists entirely of for sale townhouses. So the 10 conditions of rezoning adoption are listed in the table here. I won't run through each one, but the conditions have been either met by the proponent or they've been secured in the land development agreement to be completed at a later date or a later stage in the development process. The other objective for council, along with considering adoption of the bylaw, is to review and consider authorization to execute the land development agreement. So for the remainder of the presentation, I'll focus on the LDA. So the LDA secures the proponent's community amenity contribution, or CAC package. Note that any proposed changes to the amenity package at this time would trigger the need to go backwards in the rezoning process and reopen CAC negotiations. Staff consider the negotiation process to have been wrapped up at third reading. The LDA outlines the timing for delivery of each amenity, which is tied to a specific project phase. So now I'll run through the amenities for each phase. So in phase 1, the proponent will deliver the 22 affordable rental units and 58 market rental units, 8 of which must be built to BC Building Code adaptable standards. They'll provide 45,000 cash in lieu, and they will build a minimum 2,400 square foot childcare facility with an outdoor play area that will accommodate a minimum of 25 children, along with a drop-off and parking area to support this use. And finally, they'll build publicly accessible trails on site that connect to Centennial Way, the Manquam Dyke Trail, and the other development phases. So in phase 2, the proponent will provide a total of 591,000 cash in lieu. They'll build a public pavilion on the dike top, a bus stop and shelter on Loggers Lane, a signalized pedestrian crossing on Centennial Way that connects phase 1 and phase 2, and public art that's valued at 111,000. They also must provide 8 of the apartment units built to BC Building Code adaptable standards. And they'll continue with building the publicly accessible trails on the phase 2 site that connect to Centennial Way, the Manquam Dyke, and the other phases. And lastly, they'll provide a publicly accessible playground. And then in phase 3, the proponent will provide one affordable townhouse unit and a total of $618,000 cash in lieu. They will also upgrade the Loggers Lane and Centennial Way intersection with the detailed design to be worked out with district engineering staff at that time. And as in the previous phases, they'll finish building the publicly accessible trails that connect the entire development and connect to Loggers Lane, as well as providing a second publicly accessible playground. So that concludes my presentation for tonight. The staff recommendation has been amended to reflect the proponent's updated commitment to use electricity as the energy source for both the phase 2 and phase 3 townhouses, and that no gas fireplaces or stoves will be installed in alignment with the district's recently implemented low carbon incentive program. The amended portion of the motion is highlighted here in red. Staff recommend the district authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute the land development agreement associated with bylaw 2529, subject to securing the proponent's energy commitments. And staff recommend that the District of Squamish zoning amendment bylaw for Centennial Way number 2529 be adopted. And thanks for your time. I'll close the presentation down and pass it back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Phillip. Council, are there any questions at this point? Councillor Stoner and then Councillor Pettendale.
Thank you. Through the chair, appreciate the proponent's willingness to come in line with our use of non-fossil fuel infrastructure. Just curious why it's not applicable to phase 1 development, especially given that's where the majority of the affordable housing units are going to be.
I can start answering the question, and then maybe Jonas Valeniškis can jump in. My understanding is that we're not holding the same energy standards to apartment units that we are to the townhouse units, due to the requirements for water heating. Most of them need to use the gas to do the hot water. Jonas, did you want to add to that?
Sure. The only thing I would add is that this development has been in review for a couple of years now, and it actually was one of the first developments to commit a portion of the development to meeting the low carbon energy standards. So they've kind of ramped it up over time, but we're also recognizing that, you know, we've negotiated these conditions a while ago, kind of before our standards have evolved, and so the proponents agreed to bring in the townhouses, which really is where I think the meaningful impact will be with this with the change.
Thank you for that clarification. And then one other question that just came up as I was reading through the phases for the CAC components. I'm just curious if we have standards that we apply around accessibility to playground structures.
Through the chair, not that I'm aware of. I don't think we have any accessibility standards that are district-based policy. I'm not sure if there's something that kind of comes in at the provincial or federal level.
It's good to know. Thank you very much.
Councillor Pettendale.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to confirm that with the CACs, you know, we talk about sort of broad assignments for active transit, parks, that sort of thing. But with CAC cash, there's nothing attributed to any specific projects as part of this. It's sort of a cash in these for use in these general categories. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. I would say we often try to put that cash in lieu towards improvements in the general neighborhood of the development that it's related to, but it does go in just to a general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Phillip, I wondered, we were completing our childcare needs assessment and childcare action strategy, or childcare strategy and action plan around the time of this rezoning. But have we confirmed with Ms. McJanet or anyone in the childcare sector that the space we've allotted is actually viable?
Through the chair, yeah, I believe the previous planner on the file, Elaine Naseby, worked with Sarah McJanet to confirm that that size would accommodate a minimum of 25 children. And then I also compared that to the VCH standards, and it looks like it could even have higher capacity than for 25 kids. And then just on the economic side of the viability, given that there was the recent economic review for space viability completed. This project is slightly different because it's not a market project. So this childcare facility is purpose built, and it's an amenity being provided by the developer that they need to find a childcare provider to lease the space to, but potentially not at market rate due to the clauses that we put in the land development agreement that would require them to lease it to the district if they can't find another childcare provider to lease the space.
So we just had a presentation from the $10 a day daycare advocates and suggesting that space should be going to the not-for-profit sector rather than for-profit. Is there a criteria in the LDA for one or the other?
I'm just trying to pull up that section, LDA, but I don't believe there is. So it doesn't specify in the LDA, it just says that it must be leased to a childcare facility operator, and it doesn't put, it doesn't designate it nonprofit.
Is that a substantial change or a minor change if we wanted to make it? Mr.
I
Valma?
think for you, Mayor, I think that is a substantial change potentially. We definitely would have to discuss that with the applicant, and I believe we have discussed that when we were working out the clause for daycare. So it is limited. It's essentially a non-market use, because if they don't lease it to somebody in the industry, they have to lease it to the district for $1 or a nominal amount. But at that point, we didn't have a policy for this, and we still don't have a policy. I would suggest that probably the best way to proceed on this would be as part of our community amenity contribution review of the policy.
Thank you. But the way that I'm reading those clauses is that if they fail to get a provider, we could take over the space and then we could turn around and sublease it to a not-for-profit childcare provider for $1. Can we?
That's correct.
So we end up controlling the space then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, council? All right, not seeing any hands. So there are two motions there. One is to authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute the land development agreement, securing the change on the energy sources, and then that the zoning bylaw amendment number 2529 be adopted. Do I need to do those together or separate, Ms. Arthurs? Is it okay to do them together? Yeah. Yeah, okay. That is moved by Councillor French and seconded by Councillor Stoner. Councillor French, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. And speaking in favor of the motion, I'm reflecting back to the mid-90s when the Ravenswood development was being contemplated in this general area. Council today was nervous about small lot proposals. The developer was bringing forward exactly that concept. And Council of the day definitely worried that the public might not accept that format. It was shiny and new at the time. It's many years later, and we've moved well beyond small lot concerns. I'm excited about this project, and I'm happy to support it.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
I too will be supporting the motions on the floor. I think that this has gone through rigorous process, and we have been able to secure many contributions in exchange for what will hopefully be a vibrant multi-use redevelopment of this site. I do think that we continue to learn as we go through each of these processes, and there are some components that I will definitely be reflecting on in terms of strengthening our language in the CAC policy around childcare space and who is able to lease that, nonprofit versus for-profit, as well as I've tucked away in the back of my head a need to potentially include some standards around playground accessibility going forward, but I don't want to withhold support for this, given the negotiations are well past, but things that we can look forward to working on going forward. Thanks.
Councillor Neil.
Yeah, thanks. I'm a little bit waffly on this one. I think I will probably end up voting in favor. I believe I voted against last time. My concern was the lack of commitment around reducing fossil fuel infrastructure. It was too much, and so I do want to recognize the steps that have been made. I know our policy, more strict policy, came in since. And so I do want to acknowledge that. I do, the other stumbling block for me is that, I think we still do have challenges around camping, and this site formerly was zoned, or part of it, for camping. And I don't know that this is the best site for camping in the district in general. But for me, that's a gap that we still haven't had I think a conversation as we take that away, how we address that. Try and think that, maybe with some of those amended contributions, we can find some piece of that to try and put towards a solution there. I do appreciate, though, the improvements that have been made. I'm glad to hear that the daycare will at least be not market, and that it can serve a significant number of kids. We know there's a very high need there, so that is something that pushes me to want to support this. So yeah, there are some reservations. I think I probably will end up voting for this. I think it's going to get support anyways. So I'll just leave my comments there, and thank you to the proponent for making the improvements.
Go ahead, Councillor Herford.
Thank you. I'll be supporting this motion. It's been interesting to see this project evolve over time in response to staff and council's feedback, and where it stands now. With the affordable, or the market rental, below market, the childcare, and the improvements to the intersection, and so on. There's a lengthy list there. I will be supporting at this point, and I appreciate the proponents' willingness to work through our processes to get to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I don't see any other hands. I'll be supporting this motion. I'm somewhat skeptical of fake ego purchase, but I'm going to keep an open mind about that they won't just be an affront to the public, but actually might be useful. Appreciate the change around the energy sources, and glad that we were able to land on a phased development that brings more employment lands into an important hub in our community. So I think that was a win. I really do appreciate having the housing dedicated to the housing suites for early childhood educators. I think that is something that we need to keep in mind going forward. And as Councillor Stoner said, we learn, and as the conversation continues about how we improve access to childcare, and with the new changes announced by the provincial and federal government, we need to really be careful in our negotiations on future rezonings about who the space is available for and how big it is, to make sure we're maximizing the spaces available, not minimizing the spaces. So that, I think, will become very important for me going forward. But I'm looking forward to seeing this move forward. I think some of the amenities it provides to the community is important, and I think one of the things that we we are getting right in many of our developments is the community connectivity aspect, that these aren't exclusive enclaves for the residents, that there's ways for the public to move through them and to use the facilities like playgrounds that are there. So I think it overall will, over the years, see a benefit to the community in this area. I will call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Phillip, for taking over for Ms. Naseby on this file. Next up, Council, we have the housing agreement for 37870 Cleveland Avenue. First up is for the affordable rental, and then the second amendment related to this property, which is the plaza at Junction Park, is for the rental housing that is contributed. So this is for adoption. So the first one is on, this is bylaw 2815/2021 for the affordable rental. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Race. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. And next up is bylaw number 2633. This is the housing agreement for Plaza Junction Park for the rental. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Hertford. Any comments on this one? Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're on to item 10A1, cancellation of September regular business meetings. So again, until we update our procedure bylaw in line with new regulations that are forthcoming, we will have to continue to hold special meetings to allow them to happen electronically. So would someone like to move the motion to change September 7th and 21st to special business meetings? Moved by Councillor Hertford, seconded by Councillor Grace. This will be the last time we have to do this, I think. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next up is solidifying Councillor Stoner's leave of absence. She's going whether we like it or not. So we do have council maternity and paternity leave policy, but pursuant to section 125, subsection 7 of the community charter, and in accordance with our council maternity and paternity leave policy, council authorizes a leave of absence to Councillor Stoner for a period of 6 months to begin the day following the arrival of her child. But I'm sure she can step back a little bit before that if she needs to. I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor French. Any comments? Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. This feels a bit funny, but it is a historic legacy of our community charter that requires me to get a vote of my fellow colleagues to have a leave of absence and not get disqualified from my time in office. So I appreciate having a parental leave policy at hand that we can lean on that was brought in 2018. We're one of 5 municipalities that I can find in the province that has such a policy. So I think that just speaks to how progressive our town and our council is. And I would like to thank you all, hopefully, for your support in this vote. And also flag that through the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District, we are putting forward a motion to UBCM to request that the province work on amending the community charter so that other future parents-to-be do not have to request leave of absence from their colleagues. So just so you're aware of that, that will come in September. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stoner. Councillor French.
Thank you. This is a momentous vote, and I want to take a moment to recognize that. Councillor Stoner is doing something that has never been done before by a district Squamish councillor. She's the first, and I'm confident she won't be the last. Councillor Stoner is a vital member of this council, and she will be missed during her leave. And her return in February will be much anticipated and will close an important chapter in the history of the district of Squamish.
Thank you. Councillor Pettengill.
Yeah, thanks. I hesitate supporting this only because I don't really want to lose Councillor Stoner for the next 6 months, but you know, I think it's setting a really important precedent, and I hope sort of one that that makes for a lot more people able to serve on council in the future. And so I'm really happy to see this happening, and I will be supporting it.
Thanks. You had me a bit nervous there, Council. Thought you were going to have one of those nonsensical moments again. Councillor First.
Thank you. I'm happy to see this policy working, and I can't wait to meet little baby Stoner when the time comes, and I'll also miss Councillor Stoner's voice around the table on our deliberations for the next 6 months. Best of luck and congratulations.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you. I was actually also tempted to oppose this. I mean, Councillor Stoner is actually one of the very few people in council that laughs on my jokes, so I thought that maybe we should try to keep her around and just see what happens. But after pondering this for some time, I have now decided that maybe this is a good thing, and so I will be voting in favor of it.
Okay, all joking aside, this is a really important piece. It's unfortunate that we still have to pass a motion rather than it being a right. We are the last level of government that enables maternity and paternal leave for parents to be. I do hope it sets a precedent for people in our community. You know, it's important that young people feel that they can run for office and that their plans around family don't have to come second, that you can combine politics and life and not have to choose between the two. And I'm grateful to Councillor Stoner for running in the last election. I hope she runs again. And as our policy allows, you know, if you want to drop in and participate in any of the meetings between now and February, I certainly could, you know, use a bit of company in the company of these gentlemen. I certainly am going to miss you for the next 6 months, but I wish you all the best and thank you for blazing this trail for other young electeds in our province. I will call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we're on to 10B, Community Planning and Infrastructure. We're on to development permit number 556. This is for the micro hotel at 37773 Cleveland Avenue.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. Everyone see my presentation all right?
We can, thanks, Mr. Daly.
Thank you. So hello again, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, Development and Subdivision Coordinator with Community Planning, and will now be presenting development permit number 556. At the February 16th, 2021 special council meeting, bylaw number 2744 was adopted. This zoning amendment rezoned the subject property from general industrial I3 to comprehensive development zone number 97 to facilitate the development of a micro hotel. The subject property is located at 37773 Cleveland Avenue, south of Vancouver Street in downtown Squamish. The property is zoned CD97, which was customized for the proposed micro hotel development. It is currently being used to store shipping containers. The property immediately to the north was rezoned from I3 to MUD 2 in 2018. Properties to the south are zoned Artisan Village C10 and Light Industrial I1. Properties to the east are zoned I1, while properties to the west are also zoned I1 and Comprehensive Development Zone 6. This development permit application seeks to allow for the construction of a 48-room micro hotel with a restaurant on the ground floor. The proposed development is taking advantage of a height bonus in the CD97 zone for a shared rooftop amenity space. The maximum height in CD97 is 15.6 meters, with a height bonus that exempts shared rooftop amenity space that meets certain criteria. The overall building height in this proposal is 19.5 meters to the top of the rooftop amenity space. Lot coverage is 65%. It should be noted that during the rezoning project, the proposed building was set back from the northern property line and built to zero lot line along the south property line. Since the rezoning application, the building has been flipped so the site massing provides a generous setback to the south property line, allowing for hotel rooms to have south views and operable glazing, while also providing daylight and landscape opportunities between properties. The project implements a continuous street facade while a second means of egress is incorporated down to Cleveland Avenue. The east elevation of the building is in keeping with the unique, eclectic, funky, and creative architecture envisioned for downtown South. Parking is accessed from the lane between Cleveland and 2nd Avenue. The proponent is proposing a stacked parking lift for this development. The lift would accommodate 16 parking stalls. One full-height accessible parking stall will also be provided for a total of 17 off-street parking stalls, which exceeds the 15-stall requirement of the zoning bylaw. The south facade amplifies the folding articulation of each hotel unit. Angled bay windows add depth, shadow, and weather protection to the recessed windows, while also ensuring privacy to the users of the hotel and adjacent properties. The project will meet the district's STEP Energy Code requirements for wood frame commercial. The proponent has also committed to using a geothermal system to heat and cool the building. Proposed lighting design will utilize 100% LED-based systems. The north facade is tight to the allowable 0 lot line setback. In lieu of a blank facade, a modestly clad and colored pattern is proposed. Colored cement board panels are proposed around the northeast corner and define the floor plate heights, while also adding visual interest. The laneway's west facade utilizes a bold roofline graphic wrapping from the 2nd floor level up to the rooftop amenity space and provides weather protection to the rear windows. This element helps articulate the scale of the building and provides a potential for wayfinding to the rear laneway entrance of the hotel, lobby, and elevator. The project meets the guidelines of Development Permit Area 3 Universal Guidelines and Development Permit Area 7 Downtown South. Following objectives and policies in the OCP provide support for the development application. The proposed project would create new accommodation units to support Squamish's tourism sector, which is a core sector in Squamish's emerging sector roadmap and action plan. Squamish has seen a 290% increase in visitation since 2008, and there has been no new fixed roof accommodation built since 2010. Legislated and district processes for engagement were followed for this application. A development proposal sign was installed on the subject property, and the project was posted on the online development showcase. Staff recommend that council authorize the issuance of development permit number 556. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Any questions on this DP? We're not seeing any hands, which must make Mr. Daly feel pretty good. All right. Council. Is that your hand, Councilor Reese?
I'm scratching my ear, but I'll also move it.
Okay. Moved by Councilor Reese, seconded by Councilor French. Any comments? Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. This is an important project. There are, now, Mayor Elliott, do I need to?
Uh-oh.
Can you hear me now, Mayor Elliott?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Bear with me, folks. It looks like I've got a bit of audio echo. If you can hear me, Mayor Elliott, I'd just like to comment that this is an important project because it is a small lot among many small lots in downtown Squamish. This is an important challenge for the downtown area and the community at large, given the role of the downtown and the role that we envision for it. There's lots of challenges. And this developer, in concert with staff, has tweaked and tweaked in an innovative fashion to bring us to where we are. There's going to be things to watch ongoing. How are people going to arrive at this hotel, say, from the city? But I think it's going to be an interesting and important experience to watch. And I congratulate the staff and our developer for bringing it forward to where it is now. I'll be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Any other comments? Happy to support this DP. I it is certainly time for some new hotel accommodation in this town. Like Councillor Anderson, I'm interested to see how this really starts the conversation about how people access our community and get around our community when they're here to recreate. And I look forward to the district being part of that on an ongoing basis. I think it's fundamental to achieving our community climate action plan that we change the way people think about access to this corridor and to the activities they love to do while they're here. I think this fits into the downtown south neighborhood really well. I like the look of the building. So looking forward to seeing this breaking ground, and certainly seeing the geothermal heating system for a larger building when we're seeing other developers say that they can't use anything but natural gas. That's precedent that I look forward to following up on. I will call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Mr. Daly.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a verbal update from staff on a BC Active Transportation grant that we need to provide a resolution for so that the application can go in. This is Mr. Wickham.
Yes, Ms. Gunn will actually be presenting this.
I don't see Ms. Gunn on my screen. That's why I went to you.
Okay, I have her on text. Maybe she hasn't been promoted yet. For the person who's promoting things, Ms. Gunn needs to get promoted.
We don't see her as an attendee, Mr. Wickham. Does she think she's an attendee?
She does.
Maybe we can move on to the next agenda item and we'll get Ms. Gunn connected and come back. Is that all right? Mr. Wickham, can you stick handle that while we tackle?
Yeah, I'll
wait.
work in the background.
Oh, hold on. She's just arrived on scene. Ms. Gunn, we're ready when you are.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you see me?
You can.
Right. I will just work to share my screen here. Apologies for being a minute tardy. One moment. All right. Can you see the right screen? Which should be my title screen for the presentation?
We're seeing your, it's not in presentation mode, so we're seeing your next slide screen as well.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
Okay.
you just need to change your display settings, I think.
Yep, thank you. Swap. All right. Are you seeing the correct thing now?
We are.
Great, thank you so much. All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Dora Gunn, a transportation planner with the District of Squamish. I have a short verbal presentation tonight regarding an application for the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant. So the grant provides up to 60% funding for communities of our size with populations of 15,000 to 25,000. That's for active transportation infrastructure that's either new or improved. The projects have to be shovel ready. They have to have any land acquisition complete, design work done, any permits have to be in place, and they have to be able to be completed by March 2023. So this year, the province actually changed the timing of this intake, and they only gave us 36 days to develop an application and put it in, which is really short, especially given the change timing. And so that has limited our options to a certain extent as to what we can apply for. It had to be a project that we had already done a lot of work on. So the project that we have selected for this application is improvements to Perth Drive. We're calling it phase 1, and it would run from the boulevard to Portree Way. Most of Perth looks like the picture under the current condition image there. It has 2 ditches, 2 travel lanes, and then a downhill bike lane. And the concept that we're proposing is in the other picture, which shows maintaining the west ditch for environmental reasons, adding a sidewalk on the west side, a downhill bike lane that's separated from traffic on the west side, 2 travel lanes, and then an uphill bike lane on the east side. We did a public consultation on this area that included Perth Drive, and the public was very supportive of this particular option. They had a 78% were either supportive or very supportive. And this is quite different than the level of support for the other options, which were actually all on Highlands Way North. But those levels of support, just for comparison, ranged from 17% to 45% at the highest. So the public was much, much, much more keen on this Perth Drive option. This did shift our thinking a little bit on this project. We had originally anticipated doing more work on Highlands Way North first and then working on Perth after that. But given the feedback from the survey, we're thinking now to do only a limited work on Highlands Way North. That would involve still installing the speed tables there, but then shifting our attention to start to work on Perth Drive. So next slide. So the total cost of the project is 1.3 million. It does qualify for DCC R10, which is upgrades to major collectors in residential areas. That's a 46% DCC. So we're proposing to have 598,000 out of that DCC, 300,000 out of the Community Works Fund. That's the regular AT capital money that we have annually. And then apply for a $400,000 grant through the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant. And lastly, I have a recommendation, which is that the District of Squamish authorize staff to pursue a BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant for cycling and pedestrian infrastructure on Perth Drive Phase 1. The project is shovel ready and the district's portion of the funding will be available in 2022. Now, the second sentence of that recommendation is actually wording that the grant application is asking for. So that's why it's in there. And that's my presentation for tonight. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Gunn. I'll go to Councillor Herford.
Thank you. I'm curious on the area. Is this the complete, would this cover the complete length of Perth, like top to bottom, bottom to top?
So ultimately, that is the plan, to do the full length of Perth, but this particular project only goes from the boulevard to Portree, which is the part of Perth that is adjacent to the school and also the busiest part of Perth.
Okay, so, and that incorporates some changes to the intersection in that area, because to whether it be Thunderbird and so on. I see the travel lane bit, but I'm missing the other pieces. I'm just curious. Supportive,
Yes.
obviously, the whole thing.
So we are planning to improve the crosswalks. So there is a crosswalk with a flashing beacon at Thunderbird already. There's also a crosswalk at Rum and Egg, and then we're going to add a crosswalk at Portree. We will add an RRFB, or the flashing beacon, also at Portree for kids to get across there. So we will be improving those crosswalks. We won't be changing the intersections too much. We aren't planning to touch the roundabout, for example.
Thank you.
Ms. Gunn, maybe you could just make a comment about when that engagement for that whole area is coming back to council, because this has sort of preempted that a little bit. So maybe some clarity for council of when we'll see the whole plan, that would help.
Absolutely. Yes, and I apologize for the timing of this. It was somewhat unexpected. So I've reviewed all the survey results and summarized those. I just need to work with communications to get that ready to go out to the public. I could bring it back to council as part of that release to the public, although I had thought I might just put it up on the website, but open to suggestions on that.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Pettengill and then Councillor Stoner?
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the applying for the grant and support that and the what's being suggested here. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but it does sound like we have a solution coming for Highlands Way, and that will be coming to council. And so this is we're sort of maybe changing the ordering, but we sort of know what we want to do on Highlands Way as well.
I think that was a question. And so, yes, we're planning to proceed with the speed tables on Highlands Way North, which was one of the options that was presented in the survey. It was not super well supported, but the lack of support was largely related to people feeling that it might not be enough. But then the other options that were available to them in the survey, they really didn't support. So we feel like we can proceed with the speed tables on Highlands Way North, and then we just need to go back and rethink what else we might be able to do there to improve the situation, given the lack of support for some of the other options that we had presented.
Councillor Stoner and then Councillor Race.
Thank you, Ms. Gunn. I'm just wondering if you can go back to the budget slide, or maybe I just misunderstood. I thought that we were able to apply for up to 60% funding through the grant, but we're applying at least 46% through DCC. So why are we not asking for more?
Yes. I will try to share that slide again, and I apologize. I should have just left it up there. Just give me 1 second. I think I'm going to have the wrong one. Yep, I am. 1 second. I do not know how to move that over. Oops, still seeing the wrong one. 1 moment. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you're right in that it says 60% of the total project cost. And one critical bit of information that I neglected to share with you, and I apologize, is that the maximum amount that any single project can be applied for is $500,000. So if you have a large project, then you can easily exceed that with your 60%. So we could have gone with the maximum amount of $500,000, but staff felt that we would have a good chance of getting the grant if we went for the maximum amount. So that is why we are aiming to apply for only the $400,000 for the grant. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just a follow-up. Do we have indication either from previous application experience or discussions with the relevant counterparts of the province that asking for the full amount would reduce our chances?
Yes, so they're always oversubscribed. I have been in touch with them over the years as we've applied for this pretty much annually. They're always oversubscribed. And so they have a scoring system for projects. And if maybe if your project isn't such a high ask in the number, but maybe doesn't score quite so well in some of the other areas, then you might still get it. But if you're asking for a really lot of money and then you still don't score so well in other areas potentially, without knowing their scoring matrix, it's difficult to know exactly what that might look like. But yes, your chances are reduced.
Thank you.
Councillor Race.
Yeah, thank you. I am supportive of this, but actually to Ms. Gunn's question, I would be interested in seeing an updated work plan for this project if it's changed after the consultation, and not tonight, of course, but maybe sometime in the early fall, whenever it could be done.
To clarify, a work plan for the work coming out of the survey that we did.
Exactly, the Highlands Way and the Perth project as a whole. Yep.
Okay, yes.
Councillor French.
Thank you. I want to be clear about the budget and what it gets us. Does the 1.3 million get us the segment from the Boulevard to Portree? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm saying yes. And then maybe just as some pre-planning, how do we fund the rest of the project? Or we just figure that out later?
Yes, that is a very good question. There's a number of different ways these projects get funded. So there's a possibility of other grant funding being available in the future. There's also the possibility of developer contributions potentially in this area. So it's difficult to answer that question exactly at this time, but these options do come up.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Gunn, just confirming that the uphill cycling lane is also separated from the road. It looked like it in the drawing.
Yes, yes, that is also separated.
And then I know we have so many active transportation projects that we'd like to do. I was surprised though that this is a project from this relatively new engagement versus some of the Safe Routes to School work that has been ongoing for a number of years, that there wasn't another project that was further along.
Yes. So we had actually originally intended to apply for the MAMPREM project, the one that we're doing currently for the AT grant, but given that they changed their timing, that wasn't possible. And this was the only other project that we had that was far enough along for this timing cycle that we had not anticipated. Whether we haven't done all of our prioritization for 2022 for the projects. Now, this project has certainly moved up the list given the outcome of the public consultation. It's probably not the top of the list, like as in the very top #1 item, but it is the only one that we were able to get out the door given the time frame that we had. It is definitely on the list though, so we're not applying for a project that we don't want. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, like Council Race, I think it's really important for council to see the outcome of this engagement and see the full plan so that we understand how it fits into the other needs on the active transportation list. That'd be great. So Ms. Gunn needs a motion from us to, I've forgotten the wording, support the grant application and that the project is shovel ready and funded for 2022. Is that right, Ms. Gunn?
That's correct.
Councillor Herbert's moving that, seconded by Councillor Race. Any further comments? I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Ms. Gunn.
Thank you.
All right, we're now on item 10C1, RCMP approval and principal letter for 2022-23. Mr. Pagely, is that you?
It is. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. My name is Dan Pagely, Acting General Manager of Community Services. This evening, I'm here before council to seek endorsement to submit the RCMP approval and principal letter for 2022-23, also known as the AIP. The RCMP require municipalities to submit projected resource requirements annually for input into their federal multi-year financial plan. The AIP is not the district's final commitment to the additional personnel or the increased budget commitment. It only provides authority to proceed with additional hire when it's confirmed in the budget cycle that council will deliberate this fall over. Staff are currently reviewing the recently completed public safety master plan with the objective to bring forward enforcement staffing levels recommendations to council this fall, aligned with the district's budget process. In the interim, staff believe it is prudent to submit the AIP to leave options open for additional staff. That concludes my presentation on this part. Back to council.
Thank you, Mr. Pagely. Any questions, Councillor? Councillor Pettengill.
Yeah, looking through this, I'd understood, and maybe my recollection is wrong, but that part of our budgets included a piece around being ready for a unionization of the RCMP. And I thought there was a line that was typically included in this. I didn't see that this time. And so am I mistaken? Do we cover that somewhere else, or is that dropped away for some reason?
Through the chair, it looks like Ms. Glendale will answer that question.
Go ahead, Ms. Glendale.
Thank you. The budget that's attached to this letter in principle is the financial plan from the RCMP themselves. That line item, the provision that we have in the event of contract negotiations is in our budget and separate from this.
Any other hands? All right. So that council endorse the RCMP approval and principal letter for 2022-23. Moved by Council French, seconded by Council Race. Any further comments? Council Pettengill.
Just that I'm really looking forward to our public safety master plan. I know that's been coming for a long time, and been really looking forward to that to understand, put a bit more context to these numbers and so on. So I understand this is somewhat in principle, and it is not a final decision. So looking forward to that master plan and comfortable supporting this for now. Thank you.
Thank you. I will call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Council, we're on to our consent agenda. So anything which you have a conflict should be declared, and any letters from the correspondence that need to be pulled, you should do so at this time. Oh, there we go. Council Pettengill.
Oh, my understanding was there was a correction to the minutes. I'm not sure if that was already made in the agenda.
Yes, it has been made. That was the correction to the motion around the municipal energy and emissions plan. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm going to pull letter number 9 just to comment on it. This is the L. Alverney letter to email to me about London Pacific Developments. All right, so would someone move the consent agenda? Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor Anderson. Any opposed? Motion carries. Staff updates. We have a memo here. There is a new national stat holiday for commemorating a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. The memo is pretty self-explanatory. So under our collective agreements, any new stats designated at the provincial or federal level are incorporated into our policy. All right. There are no late agenda items. Correspondence, action requested. The petition link from Kay Gray for the lights at Alice Lake be forwarded to engineering, MOTI, and the mayor for a UBCM minister meeting. If we get it, let's hope. Moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by, I'll second that. Any opposed? Motion carries. A number of letters around the Eagle Wind Park Playground, but that the correspondence from our Squamish Placemaking Society and other letters on this topic be referred to staff and budget. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up, email from T. Saxby about the Woodfibre LNG application for a Crown water lease. This is for council consideration. Council, is there any action on this one? Otherwise, receive. Council Pettengill.
Yeah, I had a thorough look at the application, and I think that it's there's some significant information missing. And so I think we should, as a council, write some correspondence to Flynn Road and outline the concerns. For me, the application is not supportable. So I don't know if there's any discussion before I try a resolution, or if I should just jump into it.
You may want to articulate why it's not supportable.
Sure. I wasn't sure if I should do that before or after, but I guess a few things. They mentioned some employment and taxation numbers, and they don't put any explanation behind them. The one in particular is about taxation benefit, supposedly at all 3 levels of government, but it's nearly double what they have on their website. It's more than double what they've submitted to the Canadian Environmental Association on record. And so the numbers they're claiming as benefits aren't lining up. They've made claims about herring and access for the forestry industry, that local groups that have been taking photos and videos have shown something that seems quite contradictory in terms of herring. Forestry, from what I understand, seems to think there's no access or no potential at the site. And when you look at the site, it doesn't seem possible that forestry activity could continue there, yet Woodfibre in their application is sort of giving the implication that they're working with forestry and there may still be options for going forward for forestry. I think when you put in the need for security and all that too, it really calls that into question. They're asked to, and just for reference, I had a look at the provincial requirements for an application, and so I judged my analysis against the provincial requirements. They're meant to analyze land use policy at the regional and municipal level, and they pull out a couple bits of regional and municipal policy, but they don't talk about the climate action sections in the regional growth strategy or the OCP, and those do significantly impact land use. And so there's no context about how all that fits in with the land use in land use policy. They're meant to talk about visual impacts, but there's no mention of the gondola. And then security, if you look at the Kinder Morgan site and the security that's required there, there's big fences and barbed wire, and it's, in my opinion, quite ugly. And so none of that is discussed, you know, what security is going to be required and what's going to look like. And, you know, there's claims of benefits sort of at national scope. And here's some of the benefits here and there, but none of the costs and, you know, worker impacts and our housing market and all of these things aren't discussed. And so I think if we're going to talk about benefits, especially at a national level as a rationale for this water lease, we should correspondingly talk about some of the challenges and costs. So in short, I think, you know, there has been a lack of engagement on this. I think most of us just found out about this, and the information is, in my opinion, incomplete or inconsistent with other information. And so I think a lot more analysis is required to be able to support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Pettengill. This is for council consideration, so is there any other councillor that wishes to speak to this before? I think Councillor Pettengill wants to make a motion, is what I heard. So before that's on the floor, are there any other comments? Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think my biggest concern with this, like many elements of this process, is a lack of engagement from the provincial level and notification. As per the provincial application requirements, my understanding is that this should have been referred to us as an impacted party, but we only received it through Ms. Saxby by email 3 days prior to the deadline for comment. So that would be my biggest concern that I would look to raise in response back to the ministry.
Councillor Herford.
Thank you. I think every time we hear about this project, in my experience, we're faced with similar challenges where lack of consultation and missing information are the sort of reoccurring themes. And I'm willing to bet we may have a letter on file that speaks to that could be used for such a for this occasion as we've used it for a past engagement opportunity. Can't see my air quotes there, but so I do think it's fair comment to even just at that level. I think that we should provide comment to that effect on this application.
Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I'd just like to echo Councillor Stoner's remarks. I believe the focus really is the process of referral, and I can't speak to this. I don't know from our staff when the province may have delivered this to the attention of the District of Squamish, but that is the issue. It is the responsibility of the province to refer this application to stakeholders, including the Blackmount Logging and BC Timber Sales, but also, of course, the District of Squamish and the SLRD. So that's what's in focus for me here, is the referral process undertaken by the province. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pettengill, I think you wanted to put a motion forward. I've also given your colleagues a chance to speak, so whether that changes your motion or not, I'm not sure, but
yeah, well, Thanks. I'll try my motion as written, maybe speak to it briefly and see where we go from there. So resolve that council submit a letter to Flynn Road opposing Woodfibre LNG's Crown Water lease application request, outlining concerns with respect to a lack of engagement, inconsistent information, and missing information.
Can you read that again for a minute, Taker?
Yeah, and I can send it along as well. Resolved that council submit a letter to Flynn Road opposing Woodfibre LNG's Crown Water lease application request, outlining concerns with respect to a lack of engagement, inconsistent information, and missing information.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Stoner seconds. Further comments? Go ahead, Councillor Pettengill.
Yeah, if I may speak to it, and I think it definitely notice and engagement. We've spoken to Woodfibre. It's not just the province, but we've spoken to Woodfibre specifically about engagement over and over. So I think that is a piece, but it is also their obligation. The provincial application requirements clearly lay out the information that's supposed to be provided, and it is just significantly incomplete. And so I think it's very hard for us to make a good decision about this application with that missing information. Maybe if that information was there, it would convince us that this does make sense, but it's just not to where it needs to be a suitable application. And so I think that's the reason for the full text of the resolution.
Councillor Rates?
Thank you. Do we know that this was not separately sent to staff?
Through the chair, or sorry, Mayor Elliott, it was, I believe, sent to Mr. Buxton, but not much before, at all, before we received it from the public. I'll have to confirm that.
Thank you.
Any other comments on Councillor Pettengill's motion? Councillor Anderson.
It's just briefly the key issue Councillor Pettingill brings forward is engagement, and also on the part of Woodfibre LNG, the project proponent. I can relate that Squamish Streamkeepers has been in constant dialogue with the Woodfibre site proponents since January 2014. And I cannot speak for the forest industry back that far, but I am aware that since November 2016, when I did speak with Blackmount Logging and Squamish Forestry representatives, just happened to be in conversation with them about their access prospects and the issues around it. So at least from that time, those two companies and presumably BC Timber Sales have been in regular dialogue with the Woodfibre project. So no immediate concerns arise for me regarding engagement with the most immediately affected stakeholders and sets of interests here. So I will not be supporting the resolution. Thank you.
Councillor Pettengill.
Just like to remind my colleagues respectfully that in our marine rezoning, we had a lot of comments about the Forestry Society wanting adjustments to zoning on the west side of Howe Sound, specifically because of their perception that the Woodfibre site was no longer going to be available to them. And when we heard about the things that forestry wants and needs to do, the fact that that was an ideal site, I think that's where my one of the rationales where there's this inconsistency. So what I'm hearing from one side at our public meetings from a representative of the forestry sector is not lining up with what I'm seeing in the Woodfibre report and what's outlined in the site plan. And so maybe there is a way to bring this all together where it all makes sense. But again, that information is missing from the application. I think it needs to be there.
Have you sent the motion to staff?
I sent it to Ms. Arthurs.
Okay, thank you. Did I see your hand, Councillor Arthurs? Go ahead.
I'm supportive of this direction. I think as I reflect on the information I need to make a decision as I sit around the council table, I always have enough information, I find, to say no, to stay where we are, and I need to have detailed and compelling information and consistent information to move something forward. So I think when there's a void of information, my default is to sit back and wait for that information to have a positive, be able to have enough information to make a positive decision. So for those reasons, I'll be supporting the motion.
Councillor French.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to be supporting this motion, and I'm doing so because I believe that the short notice that has been given to our key person on staff, Mr. Buxton, is unacceptable, and we have seen this type of short notice when it comes to consultation regarding the project at Woodfibre. I think that it's important for us to send a message that we need more, we need a larger amount of time when consultation initiatives like this are taking place, particularly when it's a
Councillor Rice.
Yeah, thank you. I'll support the motion on the issue really of process more than anything else. You know, I think there is a lesson here for I think for Flinro and for the process that we do need timely information if they expect us to be able to comment on it. I'm not concerned particularly with the application. It's more or less what was there when the pulp mill was running, I think. And that site has been considerably improved since that time. So that part of it doesn't concern me. And I'll go on record saying that. But the process is concerning, and we've talked to the EO office and others at the province about this over time, and it just doesn't seem to improve. So I think for me, the message is around the process.
Councillor Stover.
Building on my previous comments, I too will be supporting this largely on the challenges of process and timing. It goes against the provincial risk matrix and guidelines for advertising and their referral components for application processes like this. In addition, I do think I don't generally have a position one way or another on the application itself for the water lease, but there are some significant inconsistencies in the application with regards to some of the numbers that are being referenced by Woodfibre in this application relative to other data points that they have published in the past. So I think calling that out, it would also be important just in terms of ensuring that the information that's being presented in this application is true to what has been presented to other levels of government.
Thank you. Seeing no further hands, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We're on to item 13A4, email from Mr. Colwell about power outage in the Highlands. So the District of Squamish sent a letter to BC Hydro stressing the importance of advanced notification for planned power outages in Squamish. I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. And a letter from Jay Baker around the child care crisis. He referred to our staff working on this file. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any opposed? Motion carries. The reason I pulled the letter, you have seen my response to Mr. Alranini. And I just wanted to let council know that I have drafted a letter to London Pacific Developments outlining my great displeasure in seeing someone usurp our engagement process and imply that there's a certain level of density being anticipated in this neighborhood before people have even had a chance to engage. And I think it's terrible behavior. And I want to assure the community that we had no idea this was happening, and that we'll be working with our staff to make sure the engagement around our neighborhood planning is clear and driven by the district and not by selfish interests outside the community. So this is a plan for all of Squamish. It's not a plan for developers to speculate. And I think overall they're taking on a greater risk here by speculating. Certainly after a neighborhood plan we just approved that limited density quite significantly in some areas. So I want to assure the community this is a plan for Squamish, by Squamish, and that the district held no role in encouraging this type of behavior. And certainly I will send a letter to that effect. So motion to receive that correspondence. Moved by Councilor Ray, seconded by Councilor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we have recommendations from Committee of the Whole to receive the North Crumpet Neighborhood Plan Engagement Process dated July 13th with comments provided by Council at the Committee of the Whole meeting. Moved by Councilor Stoner, seconded by Councilor Anderson. Any comments? I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. On Active and Safe Routes to School, that the District of Squamish received the Active and Safe Routes to School program update report from Community Planning dated July 13th, 2021 for information. Moved by Councilor French, seconded by Councilor Stoner. Any comments? I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. The District of Squamish approved the Municipal Energy and Emissions Plan and incorporated into the district's financial plan and work plan in line with the district's targets to reduce GHG emissions. I'll move that. Seconded by Councilor Herford. Any comments? I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. That the District of Squamish adopt the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Committee Terms of Reference. Moved by Councilor French. Seconded by Councilor Herford. Thank you. Any comments? I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. That the District of Squamish endorse the scope of work and draft engagement program for the Community Marine Water Access Review as presented on July 13th, and that the District of Squamish directs staff to draft a special project scope for archaeological resource management for consideration in the 2022 budget, and that the District of Squamish bring a request for contribution towards the Akatsum Howe Sound Marine Reference Guide for consideration in the 2022 budget process. Moved by Councilor Race, seconded by Councilor Stoner. Any comments? Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. That the District of Squamish received the July 13th report from Economic Development and endorsed the next implementation steps as described in the Squamish Employment Space Viability Analysis Report, which we should probably add to that motion. Charlene, the name of the report is actually missing from the motion. So if we can just add that, the name of it in the motion. Moved by Councilor French, seconded by Councilor Pettengill. Any comments? Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. And that the Committee of the Whole receive the permissive tax exemption report for information. Moved by Councilor Herford, seconded by Councilor Race. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we have advisory design panel minutes from July 8th to receive. Moved by Councilor Stoner, seconded by me. Any comments? Seeing none, any opposed? Motion carries. We don't have any in-camera announcements today. Anybody online with a question for clarification? No, we're good. Council or staff announcements. Councilor Anderson, go ahead.
150 years ago today, July 20th, British Columbia joined Confederation. And I suppose it's due to COVID and maybe lack of money in heritage funds and whatnot that we're not doing more celebrating than we are. I'm sure that in other circumstances there would be grant programs and things underway. But I just wanted to pass on a quick bit of trivia relating to Squamish. One of the articles of Confederation was a railway to the west coast, and Squamish was a candidate site for a terminus. And so a line was drawn across the middle of the Delta Island called Squamish Island in 1871 to create a port reserve, the southerly part of that island. That line is Pemberton Avenue, and the line was confirmed later in negotiations with local Chief Joseph, and the top half of the island became the Squamish Island Indian Reserve. So the wacky angle of Pemberton Avenue is one of the legacies of BC joining Confederation 150 years ago today.
Thank you for that fun fact, Councillor Anderson. Who knew? Any other staff or council announcements? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thank you. You know, one of my sort of key talking points has been let's not return to normal, let's build back better out of COVID and so on. But was able to attend the first Amped in the Park of the season this past Thursday, and it was really nice to be back to that bit of normal. It was performances from Squamish Academy of Music students and students who were also teachers of other students, and just fantastic performances all around, families there, great music, and there's a whole circus as well, which I understand has become a regular occurrence. So it's just gone up a whole other level. People on those what's the word, those lines and hanging from all these bands and just doing crazy stuff. So it was just a wonderful night. I understand that's going to be the thing every Thursday in summer, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Thanks, Councillor Pettingill. Did you get to try the crazy circus things, or do people get to try them?
There's lots of people doing it. That's not, I would end up in the hospital, so I probably won't, but great to see other people do it.
Anything else? I saw Councillor Stoner at the Under the Awning celebration at Under One Roof last Friday. And so this was to acknowledge some students from Howe Sound Secondary in the leadership class that completed a fundraising project and enabled an awning to be purchased outside the market and Under One Roof and create some covered space for that area. There's table and chairs there from our Squamish. This was a huge collaborative effort between the students, United Way, Community Enhancement Grant, and our Squamish. There were just so many people there that had contributed to helping these students be successful in their fundraising effort, and that is what community is all about. And it was just so wonderful to be outside with folks in the community and residents of Under One Roof and celebrate this addition to our public realm that was made possible through the leadership of young people. So very much looking forward to the Youth Council kicking off this September, and applications are now open. They're on our website. I'm meeting with some of our community partners tomorrow so that they're up to speed. And then Council, you'll see our advertisement ramp up over the summer. 15 positions for youth 14 to 24, and applications close September 13th. So we'll give students a chance to think about it over the summer and get their applications in. And there's a little video that I shot on our website to talk about it. But yeah, very excited to continue to elevate and promote the youth voice in our community. They obviously have a lot of great ideas, and glad they're going to have a venue where they can make more happen. All right. We do have some business to finish, so motion to close. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Herford. So yes, we'll terminate this meeting and then we'll use the closed link for the rest of our meeting. So, sorry, motion to close. Councillor Herford. Well, you want me to terminate, not close. Oh, right, we're going back to the other one. Oh my goodness. All right, motion to terminate by Councillor Herford on the technicality, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any opposed? Motion carries. Council, see you on the other link. Thank you to the staff who supported us tonight and the public who attended and listened online.